What happens when a CEO hears his head baker demand something so outrageous? It makes him freeze mid-shift. Frederick Zane stood behind the bakery's counter, wearing a faded brown apron, flour dusting his forearms. It was a Monday morning, and he'd been up since 4. This was location number 9 out of 16 in his chain of boutique bakeries, and it was the one that had been flagged in the last quarterly report for inconsistent output and high turnover. Sales weren't awful, but customer complaints had risen. He couldn't ignore it anymore. He'd bought the entire chain 7 years ago from a retiring couple who ran it like a family business. Since then, he'd grown it with care, adding new locations but keeping the branding tight and the recipes original. But with every new store, he felt himself slipping further away from the people behind the counter. So now, he was fixing that. Disguised in thick black-rimmed glasses, a trimmed beard, and dyed ash-brown hair that made him look 10 years younger, Frederick went by Rick, a new trainee sent over by corporate. No one at this location had met him before. He'd only visited this store twice years ago and never met the current staff. They had no reason to question his identity. "Rick, move faster with the quassa prep. That butter's gonna melt if you don't work quicker," barked a voice behind him. Frederick turned to see a tall, broad-shouldered man wiping his hands on a towel. This was Trent, the head baker. Early 40s, no nonsense, and clearly used to running the place his way. His name had come up in a few HR reports, but nothing concrete. Just vague remarks about management style. "Got it," Frederick said, keeping his head down. The rest of the morning was a blur of kneading, rolling, and trying not to get in anyone's way. The crew was small, only 4 people on shift, 1 cashier, 1 barista, and 2 bakers. The cashier, a young woman named Selena Waller, was the only one who smiled at him. "You knew?" she asked during a break. "Yeah, first day," Frederick nodded. "You're doing okay." "Trent's rough, but don't take it personal." He noticed the dark circles under her eyes and the way she rubbed her wrist every few minutes. She was fast on register, polite with customers, and seemed to handle most of the morning rush alone while the others stayed in the back. By noon, Frederick had a better picture. This store was short-staffed. 1 barista had quit 2 weeks ago, and the assistant baker was out with a back injury. No replacements had been sent. That explained the rotating shifts and long hours. After lunch, Trent called him over to the back room. "You said you're from corporate, right? That means you'll know how to push things a little." "Push things." Frederick kept his tone neutral. Trent leaned in, arms crossed. "I want a raise, and not a small one. I've kept this place running on my back. I'm here at 3 every morning. Half my crew's green. I'm the only reason this place hasn't gone under." Frederick blinked. "Okay, I mean, I don't really control that stuff." "Well, someone has to. I've been asking for over a year. I train every new guy, cover when staff flake, and I'm still making the same as I did 3 years ago. I want 10 grand more minimum, or I walk." 10, Frederick repeated, stunned. "That's I'll take my sourdough starter and bounce. You think anyone else knows how to make the rye right? Or the pistachio Danish? Didn't think so." Frederick was frozen for a beat. He hadn't expected this, a demand like that, not a request, not a discussion, a threat. "You'd leave and sabotage the recipes?" he asked. "If that's what it takes, I'm not working myself to death for scraps. You want results, you pay up. Otherwise, I know a place uptown that'll hire me tomorrow." Frederick stared at him. This wasn't just about money, it was power, control. Trent thought he was untouchable. "All right," Frederick said quietly. "I'll pass that along." Back out front, Selena was wiping down tables. Her motions were slow, tired. But when a customer spilled coffee, she rushed over with a new cup and a smile that didn't feel forced. "You okay?" Frederick asked her. She looked up, surprised. "Yeah, just." "Long day?" "You always work doubles." "Lately, yeah. Trent asked me to, says we're short. I don't mind helping." Frederick nodded. "You ever ask for help?" She laughed softly. "Wouldn't go far. Trent says we're not hiring till sales pick up." That didn't make sense. The budget allowed for 2 more hires. Frederick clenched his jaw. Something was off here. At closing, Trent barked orders at everyone, barely lifting a finger himself. Selena stayed behind to clean the espresso machine. Trent didn't thank her, just grunted and left. Frederick helped her mop. She looked at him, surprised again. "You don't have to, you know." "I want to," he said. "You deserve it." She smiled. It was the first genuine one he'd seen all day. As he locked up with her and watched her walk tiredly to the bus stop, he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't done here. Not even close. The next morning, Frederick was back before sunrise. The air still carried a chill, and the bakery lights flickered on one by one as he unlocked the front door. He'd volunteered to open, claiming he wanted to learn the full shift rotation. Trent hadn't argued, just tossed him the keys and told him not to burn the place down. Inside, the silence was thick. Flour hung in the air like mist, and the walk-in freezer groaned softly as its motor kicked in. Frederick slipped on the apron, tied it tighter this time, and moved quickly. He wasn't here to watch anymore. By 6, the door chimed. Selena stepped in, her jacket zipped to the neck and her hair damp from the morning drizzle. She looked startled to see him already prepping the dough. "I thought Trent was opening today," she said, shrugging off her coat. "He swapped with me," Frederick replied. "Said I needed to understand the unglamorous parts." She cracked a smile as she washed her hands. "Then he definitely gave you the worst of it." Opening shift's no joke. Frederick worked beside her in silence for a while, letting the rhythm of the prep settle between them. She moved with quiet efficiency, checking expiration dates, folding pastry boxes into stacks, restocking the front cooler without being asked. "You always this thorough?" he asked, slicing parchment for the sheet trays. I figure if I'm going to be here, I might as well do it right." "You ever thought about being a shift lead?" Her hands paused just for a moment. "I asked once," she said. "Was told I don't have supervisory presence, whatever that means." "Who told you that?" Trent said. He needed someone who could command a room. "I guess I don't talk loud enough." Frederick didn't respond. He just nodded and returned to folding croissant dough. By mid-morning, the other 2 team members arrived: Lee, the barista, and a new trainee named Max, who couldn't have been older than 19. Trent walked in last, coffee in hand, not even pretending to have rushed. "You overmixed the scone batter," he said to Frederick without looking up from his phone. "Don't let it go gluey next time." Frederick didn't respond. He was watching Max, who was being given no instruction, no support. Lee was juggling register and espresso pulls, while Selena had to dash to the back twice to restock solo. Trent leaned against the back counter, scrolling, sipping coffee, offering no help. By the time the mid-morning rush hit, Frederick had seen enough. The line was snaking out the door. Lee's hands were shaking as she tried to steam milk and punch in orders, and Max was frozen at the pastry case, unsure how to answer a customer's question about allergens. "Max," Frederick said quietly, "you help Selena with restocks." "I'll cover the case." Max looked relieved and hurried off. Trent glanced over but said nothing. A woman in a blazer approached the counter, tapping her foot. "I ordered a cappuccino 15 minutes ago," she said sharply. "Is there a reason I'm still waiting?" Before Frederick could respond, Trent stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said, voice flat, "we're understaffed. If you don't like it, I suggest you find a faster bakery." The woman blinked. "Excuse me, you heard me. We're busy." "You're not entitled to instant service because you wear a suit." Frederick turned to him. "Trent, that's not how you handle a delay. I'm not babysitting grown adults who can't wait for coffee." The woman stared at both of them, then turned and walked out without another word. Selena came up to the counter just as the door closed behind the customer. "Was that about the cappuccino?" she asked, glancing between them. Frederick gave a short nod. Trent was already walking away. Selena sighed but didn't say anything. She went back to work, shoulders tighter than before. By noon, the store had thinned out. Lee was cleaning the milk frother with slow, deliberate motions. Max was in the back folding boxes. Trent had disappeared into the office. Frederick followed. The office was barely bigger than a closet. One desk, a metal file cabinet, and a stack of unopened supply invoices. Trent was sitting in the chair, scrolling again. "We need to talk," Frederick said. Trent didn't look up. "You're not my manager. I'm from corporate. You know what that means." Trent set the phone down slowly. "You wearing a wire or something?" "I'm asking why you're not helping your team when they're clearly overwhelmed. I trained them. They should be able to handle a Tuesday rush without falling apart. You're not training. You're avoiding. You don't coach. You criticize." "That's not leadership." Trent stood. "I've kept this place afloat for 3 years. You think I need a lecture from a temp?" You threatened to take proprietary recipes if you didn't get a raise. You humiliated a customer. You've ignored a trainee who's clearly struggling. You've refused to staff properly and then blamed the team for slow service. You think I haven't noticed? Trent's eyes narrowed. What are you, a spy? Frederick stepped forward. I'm Frederick Zane. I own this company, and you're done here. Trent's mouth opened, but nothing came out. You can collect your things now. I'll have HR contact you about final paperwork. You can't just— I just did. Frederick stepped aside. Trent stood there, stunned, then grabbed his phone and walked out, muttering under his breath. By the time Frederick returned to the front, the air in the bakery felt different. Lighter. Lee looked up from the espresso machine, confused. Max was frozen near the back door, holding a tray of muffins. Selena came out from the stockroom, saw the empty space where Trent usually stood, then looked at Frederick. He's gone, Frederick said. Effective immediately. No one said anything for a moment, then Lee put down the milk pitcher. Wait, are you serious? Frederick nodded. Max hesitated. But who's running the store? You are, Frederick said, looking at Selena, her eyes widened. Me, you've held this place together. You're organized, respected, and you don't treat people like they're disposable. That's what leadership looks like. Selena blinked, stunned. I'm not offering it lightly, he added. There'll be training, support, but if you want it, the position's yours. She didn't speak at first, just looked around at the others. Lee nodded slowly. Max gave a small smile. Okay, Selena said finally. I'll try, Frederick nodded. That's all I ask. Later that afternoon, as the last of the lunch crowd filtered out, Frederick stepped outside and made a call to HR. We need to post 2 openings for this location, he said. Immediately. And I want a regional trainer here by Friday to support the transition. He hung up, turned back toward the bakery, and paused at the door. Inside, Selena was showing Max how to rotate the pastry stock. Lee was laughing at something he said. The energy had shifted. And it wasn't just because the head baker was gone. It was because someone capable had been seen and trusted. Frederick stepped back inside, rolled up his sleeves, and went to work. The days following Trent's removal were tense but steady. Frederick didn't return to his office uptown. Instead, he remained embedded at the bakery, now openly as himself. He worked shoulder to shoulder with the crew, not as an owner hovering overhead, but as another pair of hands trying to keep the place running while it found its footing. Selena didn't immediately fall into the role of shift lead like someone flipping a switch. She asked questions constantly about scheduling, ordering supplies, how to handle late deliveries. Frederick guided her through it, but left space for her to make choices. She didn't hesitate when it mattered. When Lee needed to leave early one afternoon to care for her sister, Selena reorganized the entire closing schedule without flinching. By Friday, the regional trainer, Gabrielle, arrived sharp-eyed and direct, with a knack for spotting inefficiencies just by standing in one corner of the bakery for 5 minutes. She didn't waste time with small talk. After 15 minutes of observation, she pulled Selena into the back and laid out a 3-week leadership support plan, including one-on-one coaching and daily debriefs. Frederick stayed out of that conversation. It wasn't his to lead anymore. But while the atmosphere had improved, the cracks in the foundation were clear. The store was still operating with too few hands. Max had missed a shift without calling, and Lee, despite her steady performance, was clearly burning out. She moved slower between tasks, took longer to respond when called, and had started keeping her phone just out of sight, checking it between orders. Frederick didn't scold her. He just noticed. Saturday morning brought the usual weekend chaos: families, couples, tourists spilling in from the nearby farmers' market. By 9, the pastry case was half empty. Selena had been on her feet since 5, and her voice was starting to fray. Gabrielle had taken over the back office, sorting through outdated training manuals and discarding what she called useless fluff from 2016. Frederick manned the espresso bar. He wasn't great at it, but he could steam milk and pour a decent cappuccino. The line was long but moving. That's when the man stepped in. He was tall, maybe late 30s, dressed in black with mirrored sunglasses and a Bluetooth device clipped to his collar. He stood just inside the threshold, scanning the shop like he was inspecting a rental car. When he reached the counter, he looked past Selena. Is there someone else I can speak to? He asked. Selena blinked. I can help you. I'd prefer a manager. She's the lead, Frederick said from behind the bar. The man raised an eyebrow, then turned back to Selena. I ordered a custom cake here last month. It was for my niece's birthday. The writing on top was spelled wrong. Selena straightened. I'm sorry to hear that. Do you remember who took the order? I didn't catch his name. Tall, wore a bandana, had an attitude. She hesitated. That was probably Trent. He's no longer with us. The man gave a short laugh, not surprised. He argued with me over the spelling, said I filled out the form wrong. Do you still have the order receipt? He pulled out his phone and tapped quickly. I emailed customer service. Never heard back. Frederick walked over. I'll make sure someone from our main office follows up with you directly. Too late. I already left a review. 1 star. Cake looked like a ransom note. Selena didn't flinch. I understand your frustration. If you're open to it, I'd like to personally offer a replacement on us. No charge. We'll make sure it's right. The man paused, then gave a tight nod. Fine, but I want it this week. She held his gaze. It'll be ready Thursday by noon. I'll confirm the details with you before then. He left without another word. Frederick turned to her. You didn't have to take that on. He was right to be upset, she said simply. I'd rather fix it than let it hang over us. He nodded. You handled it well. She didn't respond to that, just went back to cleaning the counter. By afternoon, the pace slowed. Gabrielle had left for the day, promising to return Monday with updated training materials. Frederick sat with Lee during her break, both of them sipping lukewarm drip coffee. You doing okay? He asked. She gave a tired shrug. I'm fine. You sure? I've noticed you've been checking your phone a lot more. She looked away. My sister's had some health stuff. I'm trying to keep tabs without making it a thing. Do you need time off? I can't afford it. She's got enough without me dropping hours. He didn't push. If you need flexibility, say something. You've earned it. She gave a small nod. Thanks. Back inside, Selena was reviewing the upcoming week's schedule. Max hadn't shown up again. That made twice in 4 days, both without notice. He hadn't returned any calls. Frederick watched as she adjusted the shifts, then paused. I think we need to let him go, she said. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? We can't keep covering for him. Lee's already stretched. If he's not reliable, we're hurting the rest of the team. Agreed, Frederick said. I'll handle the paperwork. She hesitated. Can I do it? He studied her for a moment. You want to? I do. If I'm going to lead, I need to be able to have that conversation. He nodded. All right. I'll sit in, but it's yours. They called Max that evening and asked him to come in the next morning. He arrived late, reeking of stale smoke, eyes glassy with fatigue. He offered a flippant apology and started to reach for an apron. Selena stopped him. Max, we need to talk first. He looked confused. About what? You've missed 2 shifts this week without notice. That's not something we can keep overlooking. I told Trent I needed flexibility. Trent's gone, and even if he weren't, that's not how this works. We've tried to support you, but you haven't communicated, and it's putting pressure on everyone else. Max shrugged. It's just a bakery. No, it's a team, she said. And we need people we can count on. His mouth twisted, and for a moment, Frederick thought he might lash out. But instead, he just tossed the apron on the counter and walked out. Selena sat down on the stool behind the counter and exhaled. You okay? Frederick asked. I didn't like doing that. You weren't supposed to. She leaned back against the wall. I don't want to turn into him. You won't, he said. You listen, that's the difference. That night, Frederick walked home instead of driving. The air had cooled and the streets were quiet. He passed a small park where a busker was playing soft guitar, the melody barely audible over the breeze. He thought about Trent, how a talented baker had become a liability because no one ever challenged his behavior early enough. He thought about Selena, stepping into shoes that didn't fit yet but were starting to mold around her. And he thought about the other stores. The ones he hadn't visited in years. He pulled out his phone and opened the company dashboard. 16 locations. 15 he hadn't seen in person in months. That was about to change. The following week was steady, but no one would call it easy. With Max gone, the team was still short-handed, and the gaps were felt in every shift. Selena handled the transitions with quiet focus, never overpromising, but always finding a way to keep the day from falling apart. Lee picked up an extra shift, not because she was asked, but because she saw the strain. Gabrielle returned each morning, working closely with Selena on scheduling, conflict management, and inventory tracking. Frederick stayed on site, no longer in disguise, but still wearing the apron. He didn't want to create distance again, not yet. There was still too much to repair. Tuesday brought a delivery issue. The flour shipment was delayed, and the driver left half the order with the wrong invoice. Selena caught it before the packing slip was signed. "This isn't our supplier," she said, brow furrowed. Scanning the label, Frederick came over. "Let me see that." The packaging was generic, no branding, definitely not what they'd contracted. Gabrielle stepped in, called the vendor directly, and escalated the issue. Within an hour, a rep confirmed that someone had altered the standard order with a cheaper substitute. It didn't take long to trace the change to a standing supply override initiated by Trent 3 months prior. "Cutting corners for profit," Gabrielle muttered, looking over the system logs. He thought no one would notice if the weight stayed the same. Selena crossed her arms. "That explains why the bread's been baking uneven the last few weeks." Frederick nodded. "We'll correct the whole chain's inventory settings." This ends here. That afternoon, Frederick called a meeting, just the bakery team, no corporate reps, no HR. They sat around the small round table in the break area, still in aprons and flour-dusted sneakers. Gabrielle leaned against the wall nearby, silent but attentive. "I need to say something," Frederick began. "Not as your employer, as someone who failed to notice what this place had turned into." No one interrupted. "I built this company with the idea that every store should feel like a neighborhood bakery, somewhere people want to be, whether they're working or buying a muffin. I lost track of that. I let distance and reports replace presence. That won't happen again." Selena shifted in her seat, then spoke. "You being here changed things, but it shouldn't take a disguise to find out what's wrong." "You're right," he said. "And that's why this store is going to be the pilot for a new program. From now on, every location will be assigned a rotating leadership visit every 8 weeks unannounced. Not to police you, but to listen, to see what's working and what's not." Lee raised an eyebrow. "That going to be you personally?" "Sometimes, but not always. I'm building a team of people who have worked these counters, not just sat behind spreadsheets." Gabrielle stepped forward. "And I'll be leading that team. I've already submitted a restructuring plan. It includes mandatory on-the-floor time for all regional managers." Selena nodded slowly. "That'd help." Frederick turned to her. "You've got 2 positions to fill. Take your time, don't settle." She hesitated. "Can we post the second one as a floating role? Someone who can bounce between stores if we're short." Gabrielle looked up. "That's doable." Frederick leaned back, approving. "Make it happen." Later that evening, after closing, Selena stayed back to finish the week's labor projections. Lee wiped down the espresso station, her movements unhurried for the first time in days. "You know," Lee said, keeping her tone casual, "when Trent was here, I used to count down the hours. Now I'm just working." Selena glanced over. "That good or bad?" "Good," Lee said. "It's the first time I've felt like I mattered here." "Then let's make sure that doesn't change." Frederick watched them from the far end of the counter, not intruding. He didn't need to. Things were shifting, not magically, not overnight, but meaningfully. The next morning, a candidate came in to interview for the barrister role. She was quiet, mid-40s, with short cropped hair and sharp eyes. Her name was Carmen. She'd worked in 2 different bakeries, both of which had closed during the pandemic. Selena led the interview, asking direct questions without rushing through them. "What would you do if you noticed a colleague struggling during a rush?" she asked. "Step in," Carmen said simply. "Even if it means getting out of my station." Selena nodded. "And if you saw a customer being rude to someone on staff?" "I'd back my team. Every time." That afternoon, she was hired. On Thursday, the man with the cake complaint returned. He was early, waiting near the front window before they unlocked the door. Selena stepped out with a white box tied in a navy ribbon. "Vanilla sponge with raspberry cream," she said. "Writing double-checked, and a voucher for any future custom order." He opened the box, inspected the top, and closed it again. "Appreciate the follow-up." She gave a short nod. "We take second chances seriously." He left without further comment. Frederick watched from his usual place behind the pastry case. Selena didn't look over. She didn't need to. That evening, with the sky turning a deep gold through the front windows, Frederick finally peeled off his apron and set it on the counter. Gabrielle stepped beside him. "You heading back uptown?" "For now," she studied him. "Think you'll miss it?" "I already do." He turned to Selena. "You're ready. If you need anything, you call me. No going through 3 departments." "I will," she said. He paused, then added, "You proved something here. Not just that you can lead, but that people like you have been overlooked for too long. That's going to change." She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. As Frederick stepped out into the evening, he saw a small group gathered near the park bench across the street. A kid was juggling, and someone clapped nearby. For a moment, he let himself just stand there, breathing in the scent of fresh bread and rain-damp asphalt. He pulled out his phone, opened the company app, and tapped the location list. "Next stop," he said to himself, and then he walked.